Good evening. My name is Joseph Sippets. It's after midnight when I'm recording this, and so it is time for another Saturday night story. And tonight we've got something a little special. I'll be reading from the book Dracula by Bram Stoker. First a beverage. Good. Okay. Okay. So you probably know, or maybe you don't know, but Bram Stoker pulled the name Dracula from history. He had done his research well um, when choosing the name for his scary vampire. It turns out that the real Dracula was a leader in a nation that was just to the east of Hungary um, at a time when the Turks were attempting to invade Europe, and the Dracula was a leader of the country and fought the Turks. And he was kind of a bloody kind of guy. He was known as Vlad Tepish, Vlad the Impaler. Um, if you crossed him, he would basically put you up on a stake, like up through your guts, and then kind of leave you on the edge of town. He's that kind of guy. So when Bram Stoker was looking for an anti-hero, he chose very, very well. Um, but what I found remarkable and interesting is in one of the early chapters, when Jonathan Harker is um, talking to Dracula before any of the vampiric starts, um, he gets him to talk, and he has him talk about his history. And some of that history is actually real history, which is I find pretty interesting. Um, so I'm going to read this. I apologize for any Eastern European pronunciations um, that I mess up. Obviously, with my name, obviously I've heard a few, so I guess I will add to that. Without further ado, a chapter from Dracula by Bram Stoker. In this chapter, I'm going to read just the speech. Jonathan Harker realizes he's trapped in Dracula's castle. He also realizes he sees that Dracula is making his bed, and he realizes that there are actually no servants in the castle, and he is just there all by himself. And at that point, his mind kind of races and he kind of freaks out. So that's where we pick this up. This is a terrible thought, for if so, what does that mean that he could control the wolves as he did by only holding up his hand in silence? How was it that all the people at Bistritz on the coach had some terrible fear for me? What meant of giving of the crucifix, of the garlic, of the wild rose, of the mountain ash? Bless the good, good woman who hung the crucifix around my neck, for it is a comfort and strength to me whenever I touch it. It is odd that a thing of which I had been taught to regard with disfavor and idolatrous should in time of loneliness and trouble be of help. Is it that there is something about the essence of the thing itself, or the medium, a tangible help in conveying memories of sympathy and comfort? Sometime, it may be, I must examine this matter and try to make up my mind about it. In the meantime, I must find out all I can about Count Dracula, as it may help me to understand. Tonight, he may talk of himself if I turn the conversation that way. I must be very careful, however, not to awake his suspicion. Midnight. I have had a long talk with the Count. I asked him a few questions on Transylvanian history, and he warmed up to the subject wonderfully. In his speaking of things and people, and especially of battles, he spoke as if he had been present at all of them. This he afterwards explained by saying that to a boyar, the pride of his house, the name of his own pride, that is the glory of that their glory is his glory, and that their fate is his fate. Whenever he spoke of this house, he always said we, and spoke almost in the plural, like a king speaking. I wish I could put down all that he said, exactly as he said it, for to me it was most fascinating. It seemed to have the whole history of the country. He grew excited as he spoke and walked about the room, pulling his great white mustache and grasping anything on which he could lay his hands that he thought he could crush by its main strength. One thing, he said, which I shall put down nearly as I can, for it tells, in a way, the story of his race. We Sikelis, we have a right to be proud. In our vein flows the blood of many brave races who fought as the lion fights for lordship. Here, in the whirlpool of the European races, the Ugric tribe bore down from Iceland their fighting spirit, which Thor and Woden gave them, which their berserkers displayed to such fell intent on the seaboards of Europe, and of Asia and Africa too, till the peoples thought that the werewolves themselves had come. Here too, when they came, they found the Huns, whose warlike fury had swept the earth like a living flame, till the dying peoples held that in their veins ran the blood of those witches who, expelled from Scythia, had mated with the devils of the desert. Fools, fools. What devil or what witch was ever so great as Attila, whose blood runs in these veins? He held up his arms. Is it a wonder that we were a conquering race, and that we were proud, that when the Magyar and the Lombard and the Avar and the Bulgar or the Turk poured his thousands on our frontiers, we drove them back? Is it strange that when Arpad and his legions swept through the Hungarian fatherland, he found us here when he reached the frontier, that Honfogelas was completed there? And when the Hungarian flood swept eastward, the Skeles were claimed as kindred by the victorious Magyars, and to us for centuries were trusted the guarding of the frontier of Turkey land. Aye, and more than that, endless duty of the frontier guard. For, as the Turks say, water sleeps, the enemy is sleepless. Who more gladly than we, throughout the four nations, received the bloody sword, or, at its warlike call, flooded quicker to the standard of the king, when war redeemed the great shame of my nation, the shame of Kosova, where the flags of Wallach and the Magyar went down beneath the crescent? Who was it but one of my own race who, as Vojvodi, crossed the Danube and beat the Turk on his own ground? This was a Dracula indeed. Woe was it that his own unworthy brother, who, when he had fallen, sold his people to the Turk and brought the shame of slavery on them? Was it not this Dracula indeed who had inspired that other of his race, who in his later age again and again brought his forces over the great river into Turkey land, who, when he was beaten back, came again and again and again through, though he had to come alone from the bloody field where his troops had been slaughtered, since he knew that he alone could ultimately triumph. They said that he thought only of himself. Bah! What good are peasants without a leader? Where ends the war without a brain or a heart to conduct it? Again, when, after the battle of the Mohawks, we threw off the Hungarian yoke, we of the Dracula blood were amongst their leaders, for our spirit would not brook that we were not free. Ah, young sir, the Skeles and the Dracula, as their heart's blood, their brains, and their swords can boast a record that mushroom growths like the Habsburgs and the Romanovs can never reach. The warlike days are over. Blood is too precious a thing in these days of dishonorable peace, and the glories of the great races are as a tale that is told. It was by this time that it was close to morning, and we went to bed. Good night.